Alright guys, so take a look at this. This is actually the Honda African Twin Adventure Sport with the automatic transmission. I'm actually going to take this thing for a test drive, which would be kind of wild. And I really want to compare this to the Pan America, which I recently took for a test drive just last week. So this thing is pretty wild. Look at how big it is. It's just kind of crazy. Alright, so I'm going to jump up on this thing. And the first thing is the guy was telling me you can't start it with the kickstand down. So you definitely have to put the kickstand up before you start it. And the weird thing is there's no clutch, no shifter, completely automatic, which is wild, which is going to be kind of hard to get used to, I think. So right now it's actually in neutral, so this is going to be pretty wild trying to figure this thing out. All right, so we actually put it in drive mode, and here we go. This is weird with no no clutch, no shifter. This is the weirdest thing ever. All right, so what we're gonna do, wow, this is wild. This is the first time I drove a motorcycle with no clutch and no shifter. All right, so I'm actually gonna, this is like in the city, so we're doing some city driving. And then what I want to do is I actually want to take it to a place I haven't been before. It's like a little beach, which is, you know, we're landlocked here, so there's really no beach, but wow, this is really smooth, really maneuverable. All right, so the kind of the weird thing about this bike is comparing it directly to the Pan America is I took the Pan America for a test drive and it was so tall. If you actually look at the specs, I think the seat height was 31 inches and I could barely, you know, the heels of my feet were barely touching the ground. It was so tall, and I'm actually 6'4". So I actually looked at the specs on this one, and this was 2 inches taller, which was 33-inch seat height. And I thought, you know, there's no way I want to be comfortable on this. And kind of the weird thing about this particular bike is that when I sat on it, it actually seemed 2 inches lower than the Pan America, which was the wildest thing. I do not know why this is, you know, actually if you look at the specs, I think the seat height is the seat height when nothing is on the seat, when it's fully expanded as far as the shocks in the back and the front. And then when you sit on it, I think this one has a little bit more give to it. So when I sit on this, it sinks down further than the Pan America. And kind of the first thing that I noticed on this, it seems like I feel a little bit more road vibration than the Pan America. And if you actually look at the transmission on this one, this has the DCT, which is actually the dual clutch transmission, which is an automatic, versus I actually have an ATV, a little four-wheeler, and that has a CVT, a continuously variable transmission. Let me tell you, they are completely different. So I was kind of thinking, you know, it wouldn't be as good because it was like the CVT, but this is like, it's almost like regular shifting. And from what I read online, it seemed like the DCT was really specific as far as motorcycles, to give you more of a motorcycle performance as far as the, you know, the automatic. This is really weird. Let me tell you, we'll never stall this thing because it's completely automatic. And it seems like it's shifting quicker than I normally would shift. So it really shifted up into second really quick, which is kind of surprising. And it seems like you can definitely feel a little more vibration in the handlebars in this compared to the Pan America. I don't know if it's from the road. I think it may be a little bit more from the road on this one. But of course on the Pan America I was more on a flat road versus on this one. This is more of a rougher road, so it's kind of hard to tell. I was just kind of surprised that this one wasn't too tall. As a matter of fact, being 6'4", and this one just a couple inches smaller, I think this one kind of has the advantage of being almost the perfect height, because I can sit on it and my knees are slightly bent, versus on the Pan America I was like, my legs were like straight down, and my heels were almost barely touching the ground. It was just almost perfect, perfectly. I had perfectly straight legs, which is, I don't know if that's the most comfortable thing, because it was almost a little bit too high. But I don't know, just this little drive right here, it seems like if you were to compare the kind of drivability of both of them, I'd say it seems like the Pan America maybe is a little more stable as far as being planted on the road. But this one seems like the suspension's really squishy. So it almost seems like this one might be a little bit better off-road versus on-road. And the hard part about this is like no clutch and no transmission. That just every time I take off, it freaks me out. So just trying to get used to that, which is pretty wild. The other thing that was kind of wild about this bike is, if you notice right in here where the handlebars, it's like the handlebars kind of go in this hole right in the middle. If you can actually see that, it kind of spins with the solid part all the way around. Seems like it has more of a kind of a like a dash, or like a whole kind of almost like a fairing on this one. And on this one, the windshield definitely goes up higher where I can't really feel it as much on my head, which might have the advantage over the Pan America. Seemed like it had definitely more wind on my helmet versus this one. The other thing about this one is your feet are a little bit more forward than the Pan America. And I don't know why, but it seems like maybe I'm getting a little more heat off of the engine coming up around my legs. It could be because I have no wind. It feels like I have no wind at all around my legs, which is kind of wild. It might be good for the rain if we get caught in the rain, which we might actually get caught in the rain. But I don't know. I kind of like a little more wind on my legs to keep me cool. Especially like today when it's like 90 degrees out. It's pretty warm today. I think on this one, maybe you can hear the engine a little bit more than you can with the Pan America. I think the Pan America is a little bit quieter, and both of them were really super quiet. So kind of the hard part about a really super quiet bike is that it's hard to, well, on this one it doesn't really matter because it's an automatic, but if you were shifting, it's kind of hard to tell where the RPM is as far as trying to figure out where to shift. But on an automatic, it doesn't matter how quiet it is, I guess. You just twist the throttle and you go. So I would say it doesn't really matter on this bike. Alright, so we are going to do 470 west in the right lane. So this will be interesting. Doing a little bit of highway. I'm just going to do a short stretch of highway to see what it's like at like 60, 65 miles an hour. I think the speed limit is 65. So another thing about these brakes is apparently this has linked brakes. So if you hit the back brakes or the front brakes, it actually works both brakes at the same time. Yeah, this is pretty nice. That windshield's pretty nice because it's blocking most of the wind. I'm hardly getting any wind from this. This is just this is really weird because I keep thinking, all right, I need to shift, and no, I don't have to shift. Ooh, you can actually leans over really well. The other thing I noticed about this bike is it seems to be, it has like an almost seems like it's a lighter bike than it actually is. It seems like on this bike most of the weight is kept really low versus the Pan America. Seems like the weight's a little bit higher on the Pan America, to where it seems like it's kind of a weird effect on the Pan America. It seems like it's a heavier bike, although I think this one's like 50 pounds lighter than the Pan America. But if you actually take this bike and kind of lean it side to side, it feels like it's like 150 pounds lighter. I don't know what it is about this bike. It seems like maybe they kind of put the weight a little bit lower, like the engine weight. They kind of managed to put a lot of the weight lower on this bike, so it has kind of an apparent lighter feel, even though it's the same weight. And it seems pretty stable on the highway, even though I'm getting a lot of really crazy wind on this highway. It's pretty solid, I'd say. Not too bad. Alright, so this is the exit we're going to take here. You can definitely see like the water over there. It's getting a little bit of waves. And the shifting thing's weird because it seems like I'm revving pretty good. I'd say on this one, it seems like the handlebars on the highway go well. We're going like 57. Let's see, let's go a little bit higher. So we're going 65 now. So 65, I'd say the handlebars are a little bit more buzzy. You feel like a buzz vibration in the handlebars compared to the Pan America, although a lot of that might be the tires on this one compared to, it seemed like the Pan America had different tires. I'll have to stop and look at the tires on this, but it definitely seems a lot more buzzier in the handlebars. Like you could potentially have a weird feeling in your hands if you were on the highway for like hours. So this one, it looks like you have to pay to get in. That's kind of where I was going. The Bear Creek Lake Park. Yeah, that's actually where I was gonna go. my GPS is now saying do a U-turn. You missed the park, but it looks like we have to actually pay to get into the park to get in by the little beach. So we can do some more kind of high speed 66. But the funny thing is, I can kind of feel some buzzing in my hand grips. But I can definitely tell this is kind of a rougher road. Doesn't feel quite as solid as the Pan America as far as, you know, being solid on the highway. But look at how bad this road is, and it's pretty smooth, handling these bumps pretty good. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that this bike is a lot less expensive than the Pan America. So I think the base model of the African Twin was like $14,000, and then this particular model is more of an upgrade. This is the Adventure Sport Series with the automatic transmission. So this one, I think the MSRP on this was like $17,200. I think I saw one that was like $17,999, almost $18,000, versus the $20,000 for the Pan America. Of course, it's kind of hard to tell the stability between the two because I'm getting a lot more wind today, and I'm on a lot rougher roads. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between the two. The other thing that's kind of interesting on this is when you kind of let go of the throttle, you have a lot of engine braking on this bike, which is pretty interesting. So you almost don't even have to use the brakes for the most part on this one, because you just kind of let go of the throttle and you have a lot of engine brake, which I guess is part of the DCT, the automatic transmission. Alright, so overall I'd say this is a pretty nice bike. It seems like this might be a better off-road than the Pan America. I think the Pan America would be a better on-road bike than this one. So yeah, I'm actually demoing this bike from it's called Peak Honda World in Littleton, Colorado. that she's letting me use this bike. And kind of the funny thing about this is it's completely different walking into this dealer compared to a lot of dealers I've actually walked in. You walk into the dealer and every single bike has a price tag on it in really big letters. It's really awesome because a lot of times you go in and you don't know the prices and you end up, you know, looking at the bikes that are out of your price range. And then when you ask the price, they're like, well, let's sit down and do some paperwork, you know. And on this one, you can definitely know the price, like, right from the beginning. Oh, I really like that automatic transmission. It's so much easier to take off at a jump. The two things I really like about this bike is it's a little bit lower than the Pan America, and that it has that automatic transmission. I'm really starting to really like that automatic transmission, especially at a start. You don't have to figure out, you know, if you're in gear, if you're in neutral, you know, and then working the clutch. It seems like you can just, it seems so much easier, you know, taking off from a start and even stopping with that automatic transmission. I didn't think I'd like it at all, but I really do like that. It's pretty amazing, actually. The brakes are really super nice on this. So the brakes are really responsive. So there's so many buttons. Like right here, check out all these buttons. It's a little bit overwhelming with all the buttons, which is kind of wild. Just, I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit easier to get used to this bike than any other bike that I've been on. It's like super easy. It kind of has a weird sound to it, I'd say, as far as the sound of the bike. It's a little bit more of a kind of a lower sound versus kind of a higher buzzy sound that I've seen in a lot of adventure bikes. I think it has a better muffler sound on the stock muffler on this one compared to like what I've seen. I love those brakes. It's pretty awesome. All right, so what else about this bike? Take a look at this. This is kind of wild right in here. See how that turns? That is pretty wild. And then the key right here. And this one, apparently it has electronically controlled shocks, which is pretty wild. So the mirrors are pretty nice. You can definitely see, it seems like the mirrors are probably the best mirrors that I've seen. You can actually see, they're really, you can see a lot behind you, all the way up to your shoulders. The ergonomics on this, I'd say, so my knees tuck right into the tank, which is nice, especially since I'm really big and tall. Yeah, I'm actually, you could probably be, I don't know if you could be much taller. You might have a problem with your knees if you were like 7.5 or 8 feet tall. I don't know if you'd actually fit on this bike. But as far as where my feet are like right a little bit forward, I'd say. It has more of a forward position. Then it seemed like the Pan America was a little bit more further back and more of a sportier position. This one still has a slight lean forward, but it's not quite as forward as the Pan America. And as far as the seat on this one, so the seat on this seems like it's completely different than on the Pan America. So on the Pan America, it seemed like it had more of a, kind of like a dirt bike seat, versus on this one, it's still a pretty hard seat on this one, but it's not too bad at all. As a matter of fact, it's pretty comfortable. I would say you could probably go longer on this one than you could on the Pan America. Of course, you know, the seats you can change out. You can put basically any seat on any bike, so... but I'd say as far as just the stock, I'd say this has a more comfortable seating. Just the kind of the shape of the seat versus the Pan America. It seemed like the Pan America was a little, it kind of seemed like the Pan America almost had like rigid corners on the sides. This one seems like, I haven't really gotten on this one to see how much power it has, but it seems like it has quite a bit of power. And if you actually look at the specs, which is kind of deceiving, especially if you're like looking at the seat height on one versus the other, you know, you think this would be too tall, but you know, it kind of compresses. If you actually look at the horsepower, this one's coming in, I think, about 101 horsepower, and then the Pan America actually is coming in at 150, so it has 50% more power on the Pan America, which is kind of crazy. You know, the other thing about this bike is if you actually look at, you just kind of glance down at the bike, it seems like it's a lot bigger of a bike. Just because of how big everything is up here. It seems like the gas tank or whatever it is, like the dash is kind of wrapping around everything, which is pretty wild. So you have even though it's a smaller CCs on this bike, you have the appearance when you're driving it that it's actually a larger bike than you're actually driving, which is kind of weird. It's so, this bike is so different. It's pretty wild. Oh, it turns so easy, so much easier than the Pan America. I mean, there's like pros and cons. The brakes are so much better on this one. It turns a lot easier. I love that automatic transmission. The seat's a little more comfortable. The thing I don't like about it, I'd say, is kind of the buzziness in the handlebars. Definitely more buzzy. And it seems like the Pan America is a little bit more comfortable on kind of the rough, bumpy roads. Of course, this is technically a cheaper, less expensive bike. So, I don't know. One versus the other. I don't know which one I'd actually go for, the Pan America or this one. Of course, if you're looking at, like, you know, this one, you're looking at a $3,000 difference. So, but if you're looking at like the kind of the base model, I'd say you're probably looking at, you know, like $6,000 difference. So I don't know. I might go with this one just because it's less expensive versus the other one, the Pan America. All right, so that's it. I just hit stop and we are done. So it's funny, some people are complaining about the kickstand. I think that kickstand is plenty sufficient for this bike. So there you have it, guys. That is Honda's African Twin, which is pretty wild. It's kind of a wild looking bike. That is the dual clutch transmission adventure sport. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.